Hi, everyone. Sorry, we're running a little bit late today. We'll be starting in another minute. Sorry for the delay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We have this webinar every couple of weeks. Not always guaranteed that it's every 2 weeks, but we try the best to showcase our new features. And we also try to give you a little bit of an inside track into new features, upcoming features. We have this available for those of you that you probably know this already. This is how you got to this page. We have this webinar page here that lists the topics of upcoming webinars, and we renew 2 months ahead of time, basically, the webinars that we have. And we rarely try to change the topics, but today, for example, we will change one of those topics, which has the data loader for OS X for the Mac, due to the fact that I would have to switch laptops, and it was not planned ahead, and therefore I will skip this one for today's webinar. But we'll be talking about the web service connector, specifically how we connect to OAuth, and how we can now use the new feature called the paging feature. And we'll also be talking about user and team parameters in dashboards. You can slice the data per user or per team, and also an upcoming feature, which right now is actually live, which is the widget visible property, which is a small but very useful feature. In the meantime, and before we get started, as always, I always give a small, quick overview of the ClicData, who we are, and what are some of the basic overall functionality of ClicData. And for that, I use a small presentation, which does not take very long, but nonetheless, I will just quickly go over it right here. If you can see my screen. Sorry, the date was wrong on that initial slide. But a little word about ClicData. We have we're sitting actually over 18,000 free and paying accounts on our system. We process over 45,000 dashboards every day. We have customers, both paying and free, in over 47 countries now, in all the continents. We are growing quite fastly, and we have data centers. We are partners with Microsoft across many of these regions where we serve the customers. But we built ClicData with one fundamental principle, which is we felt in our experience for large and small companies that implementing business intelligence tools, it is just too complicated. It is complicated. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of servers, a lot of tools, different tools to do different jobs. And ClicData is the answer to that, where we try to encompass the best of each step of building your BI solution, your reporting solution for your company, into a single tool. Basically, the steps in really setting up a data warehouse and BI, a reporting platform, is really to be able to connect to the different systems that your company uses, that we are able to combine those data sets into meaningful views and meaningful joins that we can compare one item in one table with another item in another table, whether that is a product or a sales territory or a customer. That we are then able to put that into a dashboard where we can create different indicators, KPIs for your customers for your users to be able to use and drill down and interact with, and finally to be able to share that in a manner that goes beyond just emailing and attachments, but rather having a centralized go-to platform that you can use to more effortlessly communicate those KPIs. So a data warehouse really is that collection of data sources that brings all those different source systems into a single entity. Some people call them a data mart, some people call them a data lake for the big data folks out there. But in essence, it is really just about bringing everything into a common denominator, into a central pool where you can get rid of the issues that each system has and bring everything to a normal playing field. That's basically what it does. In the process, we use tools to clean the data, to process the data once they are in the data warehouse. We can use some tools. They're known sometimes as ETL, and to transform and load the data to make it cleaner and better, so that you can make more meaningful dashboards. Which brings us to the point as to what is a dashboard. Is in essence a subset of the most important metrics that you have across all your different data sets. So it's the next level down, where you put your clear and well-defined indicators, whether those be charts or a numeric indicator or a simple percentage to say, are we doing well here? Are we not doing well? Do I need to look into this? Do I need to focus on this other area? And provide simple navigation between the dashboards or within the same dashboard using drop-downs or click-throughs and things like that. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are hosted out of Microsoft Azure with a lot of data centers across the world. We're adding new data centers. We're looking currently into Canada and Germany. We have data centers in Azure, in the US and in Europe today. And along with our partners in Brazil, MyIT, we are also looking into a data center in Brazil. And of course, with that, we have lots of support from Microsoft in being validated and in ensuring that your data is securely hosted and highly securely stored, as well with redundancy, backups, and a lot of other features. Just to summarize, our key advantages are really the connection, storage features. All the steps of BI is in one tool. You don't need to purchase different tools. The fact that we are cloud-based makes it even easier, because you also don't need to purchase hardware and interfaces between those hardwares and things like that. So again, it's that entire all-in-one, but that gives you the faster approach to building more meaningful dashboards quicker. If your source systems change, your dashboards continue to work. So if you're doing an upgrade, if you're moving from Salesforce to another CRM system, or from another system to Salesforce, you can have both in parallel. you can start bringing new data in. And you can even mix it with your own data, with Excels and things like that. So again, people are just now going to be looking at exporting data out, but they'll be actually looking into importing their data in. You can integrate our dashboards into your own portal and websites. We are available in 5 languages, more to come soon. And we're available in 5 data centers across the US and Europe, and more to come, like I said before. Which means that the data is close to you, and that is unique as well on our offering, where you can actually leave European data in Europe and US data in the US, and in future Canadian and German and so on. And probably very important for everyone attending this webinar is the pricing. We are well below the pricing that it would cost you to not only purchase the same type of software, and here I'm not talking just about visualization, but all the other software alongside with it, such as databases and things like that. Servers, because we are cloud, but as well the interfaces that it would cost you and the staff that would cost you to keep all that up and running. So with all that, we're going to go straight into the topics of today, which is quickly going through the web service connector, the user and team, and the widget visible property. In the meantime, we'll talk. We'll postpone this topic, the DataLoader for the Mac and the Unix system, for another time, and we will switch that to my quick demo account here. Start looking at some of these topics. So first and foremost, we look at the data. When we look at the data sets here, and we create a new data set, with the web service connector, we need to differentiate between the web service and other type of web connectors. So again, just to go through all the connectors that we have on our system, a lot of database connectors and so forth. If you look at the web feeds type of connectors, you'll see there's an OData, an RSS, and a web service connector. These are all type of web feeds. There's another connector called the HTTP connector. Let's see here if I find it, web HTTP, there it is. Now, this is not a web service connector. This is if you have a file sitting on a web server, similar to an FTP server, but it's a web server, you would be able to use this connector to properly grab that file. That would be a CSV or an Excel file sitting in a protected or unprotected public server out there. But we're talking today about the web service connector. The web service connector is a very specific connector that allows you to connect to different web services out there. And the type of web services that we talk about is web services of type REST. And REST is just a term that means it's the type of web service that is quite light. And there's lots of documents out on the web that explain the difference between REST and other type of web services. But in today's web application, cloud-based application, you will be hard-pressed to find a SOAP connector or API. So for example, if you type, let's just take Podio here, and you type Podio API, when you look at that, the first thing they'll tell you is that our API is RESTful compliant somewhere along the line. And they'll tell you a little bit about what you can do and so forth. In most of these, there are a lot of different conventions, potentially conventions, but in essence, a RESTful API always has different types, different methods, so get, post, put, delete. For the most part, in our cases, we use get because ClicData is always going to these APIs to get data from those APIs from your account in the system. So you would be a get. Again, same thing with other types of APIs. There will be different standardizations or implementations of how you can get data from their APIs. The second piece is the security, which is very standard as well today, is OAuth 2. And what is OAuth 2? Is an authentication that you gain permission from a specific application to access from another application. So when ClicData requests data from Podio, you must first allow ClicData to gain access to your data, and that is done via this OAuth 2 protocol. And we're going to see a little bit about how we have that in ClicData. The third and final piece is once you have the method and the authentication all settled, is the type of data that you get. And you see here that in Podio, they use something called JSON. The JSON standard means that once you start getting data, or once Podio starts delivering the data to ClicData, that the data is formatted a certain way. There's a certain structure that makes it look like, for example, here's an example of a JSON, a JSON type of structure where you have, the name of a column and then the value, for example. So we in ClicData, we are able to handle JSON. The other one that's very widely used is XML, which we also are able to handle. So as you can see here, going back to ClicData, to start ClicData web service connector, you give it a name, you pick your endpoint API, you can provide your authentication. And again, we have OAuth 2, as you can see here. And again, you will need a few items from your OAuth 2, depending again on the application that you're trying to connect to. And again, if you're having issues, please don't hesitate to contact us at support@clicdata.com, or you can enter a support ticket in our system. If you're having issues, we'd love to try to help you out. But the idea is that you need to fill out this information, which is typically provided by the system that you're trying to connect to. So once again, each system may slightly be different in what they call these things. Some people call it the account secret, not the client secret. So these are the things that sometimes are a little bit more difficult to understand. The defaults on the other columns should be more than enough for you to be able to connect. Headers is the ability to add additional headers to your web service connection. We don't need to get into that just on this webinar, but the idea is that, again, you would have to look at whatever system you're trying to connect to provide you with that. I'm just going to actually go into a different API, a much simpler API, one that I do not need to actually provide the different OAuth configuration, but one that allows me to use a basic or a none authentication. So this is obviously just to get past. So we're actually going to the City of Sacramento Open Data portal. And in here, we have lots of great data sets that we can kind of use, some of them to actually gain access to their API. Let's see if we can do this. API, and here's specifically a small API that we can connect to, and we need, in this case, to get an API key, which is something as part of this process. So we're just going to get your API key, and here we go. This is a nice long big key, and we're just going to keep that somewhere. We're going to go back to our instructions here. Copy the API call and replace in there with my API key. Build the full string. Now, you can test the API typically. If you type the full API, if it's not an OAuth 2 security. If in this case it's a very simple security, you just pass a key like I did. You can test it by just putting it on your browser and seeing all the data come through. That means that this is great. That means the data is coming through. Okay. If you want to test connecting using another tool, obviously you can use our tool, which will give you as many errors as we can. But if you want another playground, there's a lot of Chrome add-ons that you can use. If you look for Chrome REST-based tools, Advanced REST Client, Postman. These are two great tools. We use Postman quite a bit. Two great tools that you can use to test your OAuth or any other type of REST. So in this case, we're just going to say no to this. We're going to type or paste the full URL. Now, one of the things you noticed here is that when we typed the full URL, it kind of stripped all that other stuff that we had here. So we pasted all this stuff here, but in essence, it just kept the first piece. And the reason why we do that is because this connection is going to be used potentially for many endpoints. So what exactly is an endpoint? Well, you see in this case, in the open data of City of Sacramento, we have multiple data sets. Each one of these data sets is accessible via a different endpoint. So this endpoint here, it's data streams, SACRA, UCR, year to year, whereas ours was year-to-date crime. So it's a different endpoint, but it's the same connection. So we will take the same type of. So again, we do this just to create one connection, and you can then move into creating different endpoints with it. So here, when you paste it again, you notice that it did not keep the first piece, and it streamlined anything that you put after onto these parameters box. So this is where we put our authorization key, and this is where we put another limit 50. Limit 50 is something that we're going to be talking about very soon, where we say, well, we need to limit how many, the API limits how many rows of data it will return to you. Again, you'll notice here again that you'll have a header. So you can put header specific for each endpoint. And as well, if this was a post, and remember we talked about the different methods of getting data, get is the most common, but some APIs do need you to do a post. Perhaps you need to post data to get additional data, more like a query kind of thing, where you need to pass some query parameters, and then you get some data back. And here is the famous paging. This is a new feature just released. As we mentioned before, there are some APIs that do not let you grab all the data in one call of the web service. You need to page through the data. But unfortunately, each system is slightly different than the other one. So there are paging methodologies. For example, Podio API here. There are different paging methodologies where you may have to. I don't know if Podio has one, but let's take a quick look here. If not, we'll take another one. Let's look for another one. Let's see if we have, maybe Instagram has API paging. It looks like some people have looked at it, so it looks like, oops, that's not Instagram. Developer documentation. So here's an API endpoint, deleting structure, metadata, pagination. So there we go. So in this case, this is exactly why we built the paging feature, where we can basically pass, a certain amount of rows. Let's go back to ClicData. If we enable this, we say, well, my API requires something that I say page, which starts at value 1 and is incremented each time by 1. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. And then there's another parameter that it needs, which says page size. And in this case, page size is a fixed item, which is give me 100 rows. So on page 1, give me 100 rows. On page 2, give me 100 rows. However, some other APIs are different. They're not talking about paging and page size. They say, well, give me from and to. In which case you say, yes, go from 1 to, let's say, 100, okay? And then what I want you to do is increment both by 100, for example. So the first time around, it's going to go from, it's going to pass a parameter saying from 1 to 100. The next time around is going to add 100 to this. It will be from 101 to 200, from 301 to 400, and so on and so forth. And this is another type of paging. Different APIs out there use different systems of paging. So this is why we built this very flexible, where you don't have to, you can actually customize this quite nicely. And again, this changes from API to API. So if you need some help, you can definitely call our expert services team, or you can contact our support team to get you going on this. If we don't have a native connector for your data. And again, if you don't use paging at all, it becomes much simpler, in which case, your API is ready to use. And you should be able to see the data coming through into your data set quite quickly, and see all the different data sets, data rows coming in. Okay, so this is a quick overview of the web service data connector with paging and with OAuth. We will go on to the user and team parameters in dashboard. And again, this is a feature that has been available for a long time, but we still get quite a few questions on whether we can customize the view for one viewer or one user that we have versus another. So one thing for sure that I'd like to go into is how we set that up. The first thing that to know is that in the new model of licensing of ClicData, which is unique as well to ClicData, is that we don't differentiate between the cost of an editor versus a viewer versus an admin. It's the same cost. And when you purchase licenses, you can assign viewer or admin or editor license as you wish. In all aspects of that, you will have on the user, you will have something called the parameter tab here. The parameter tab is really anything that you want to add to this user. You can say, for example, employee ID. Oops. Employee ID. And give this user an employee ID. Or you can say this user is part of, department sales, for example. Okay, this does not have to match anything on your data. It's just a parameter that you define. Okay, it could just be something, hair color, and you can say, blonde. Okay, oops. So again, it's just an attribute of this user, and you can define any attributes or parameters for the user. You can also define attributes at the team level. So when you create a team, when you put in the team, you can add a parameter. So any user that's inside this team will also have this parameter assigned to them. So this is a nice way for you to quickly set up parameters for users. So how do you use these parameters? So if you set up these parameters, how do you use them in a dashboard? Well, use them in a dashboard by applying filters. So for example, if you create a new dashboard, and you, you can add, for example, a data set, a simple table, where you pick a data source, car sales. You can say, I like to see all the car sales, etc., and cost, for example. So here's car sales unfiltered. It's showing all the countries here without any filters. Now, obviously, you could do a drop down to put in some filters and so forth. But in your case, what you'd like to do is to say, okay, fine. If it's me seeing this dashboard, then yeah, I can see all the data. But if it's somebody else seeing this data dashboard, what I'd like to do is filter this dashboard by country, based, for example, on the user parameter. So I would say then, well, you know what? I will create a parameter here. And you see that I've created already quite a few of them that will filter this based on that specific parameter. So, let's do that. So I'm just going to go back and just going to save this dashboard for a second. I'm going to open another session so I can have the users on the other session. And I'm going to, for example, pick this user here, Eldon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all these parameters so it's nice and clean, and add a new manager. I'm going to say, this person is, let's say, the country manager for France. Okay. So Eldon right now has that parameter. So if I go back to my dashboard, and I'll say, you know what, I'm going to set up these filters, add a filter for each for the simple table, where the country is going to be equal to that country manager code, which I've set up just for Eldon right now, but it'll potentially be set up for other users. So one of the things you notice is that the whole data disappeared for me. Well, Telmo, my user, does not have that country code. So the dashboard, it's already doing its job, saying, okay, well, Telmo, you're not allowed to see this data. Eldon may be able to see this data, but not you. So let's go into another session with the same company here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to browse a new. I'm going to log in as that user Eldon, which is user Eldon is a viewer, so he doesn't see this dashboard just yet. So I have to give permission to this dashboard to Eldon. Security, Eldon, save. Okay. And now if I refresh Eldon's screen, hopefully I'll see it. It's already there. So I click on this, and I should be able to see just France, because Eldon has that country code. So this is the simplest way, one of the simplest way to use filters and user and team parameters. It is quite simple to use, simple to set up. You can import the user parameters as well when you're adding users. You can import them all using the import feature, so you don't have to type them. But also keep in mind that you can do team parameters as well. One last thing on the user and team parameters is the fact that you can use these in formulas. So for example, if you set up a number indicator and you switch it to a formula mode, you go to the function editor here, and you look at parameters. There's user and team parameters, and you can use these using the user parameter or team parameter function, and this will return. In this case, again, for me, it'll return nothing because the user does not have this country manager code implementer. But for other users, it'll return whatever they have on that parameter. And you can use that in formulas as well to do more complex actions within. And one of those complex actions actually is, which will take us right into the next topic, is actually the visibility. Maybe on some users, not only do you want to filter the data, but maybe you don't want them to show, for example, a widget, okay, or you want to toggle the visibility of certain items, certain widgets, based on a formula, or maybe you just want to have this visible for you, in design mode, but then when it comes out to pushing it out to other people, you want to hide it. Maybe it's something that you just use for your own temporary design. So you can do it visible. And you'll see it's a bit grayed out. It's a bit faded. You can look at the visible property. Also, the visible property is available on the master properties page right here. Okay. Now, one of the things that you can do is put it into a tri-state, the famous orange mode. The tri-state is, this will be visible if the formula returned here returns true. So if you evaluate and it's true, it'll be visible. But if it's false, it will not be visible. So how do you test this out? So before we get into the formula, let's just compare it here. If I have it as visible right now, and I click the preview here, let's say on the desktop, I see the widget. That's the first thing. If I disable it and I say it's not visible, and I look at the desktop as if it was a user, the widget is gone. And if I put it into a tri-state and the value is true, see what it does. Oh, something is not working. See? So it's actually something wrong with what I'm trying to do. It should work. It is interesting that it doesn't work. It's not one. Okay, so maybe this is something for me to check a little bit later on. But the value of that formula would be able to determine the state of this widget at runtime when the user actually looks at this dashboard. So this is the visibility property is mostly handy at this point in time, really, to be able to hide certain widgets, to have multi-charts, and to be able to control. And of course, you should be able to control this by looking at and creating, for example, buttons using our button widget, where or a toggle widget, for example, where they can disable or enable a certain feature. Probably the switch feature is more interesting, where if they click, certain things change here. Maybe you hide this simple table and you replace it with a chart, for example. So you can toggle the visibility of each one, looking at other properties. So that is what was supposed to be an upcoming feature, but it was fast-tracked. So it's just been released yesterday. So again, if there's any issues or improvements to be made, don't hesitate again to contact us. And looking forward to hear your feedback on that feature. And with that, and unfortunately, again, my apologies for not being able to show the DataLoader for OSX on this webinar, but I'll be better prepared next time with my other laptop ready to go for the next webinar. With that, just checking here if there's any questions. I'm just going to check here the console for any last-minute questions. And don't see any questions. Manage registrants, manage questions. No, this is good. That was clear as water. Thank you very much for your time, and until the next webinar.